I am 63 years old, and on the morning I almost died, I was getting ready to sign my company over to my son. I had built Whitlock Supply Group with my own hands after my husband passed away. For years, I carried the weight of that company, believing that one day it would be safe in my family's hands. That Tuesday morning, my son Lucas arrived early. He looked calm, focused, almost relieved. His wife Claire followed shortly after, polished and composed, carrying a tray with 3 cups of coffee. She handed one to me with a soft smile. At that exact moment, Patricia Acosta stepped into the room. Patricia had worked in my home for 18 years. She knew my routines better than anyone. She knew how I liked my coffee. She knew when something was wrong. As she moved past me, she stumbled. The coffee spilled across my lap and the carpet. Before anyone could react, Patricia leaned close and whispered in a voice I barely recognized, "Do not drink it. Please trust me." My heart skipped, but my face stayed calm. I nodded slightly as if accepting an apology for the mess. No one noticed when I switched cups. We sat down. Papers were placed in front of me, documents meant to transfer control of my company. Lucas talked about the future, about responsibility, about how tired I must be. I lifted the coffee cup and took a small sip. It tasted wrong. 5 minutes later, Claire stopped talking. Her hands began to shake, her face drained of color. She tried to stand and collapsed onto the floor. Chaos filled the room. Lucas shouted her name. Patricia froze in place. I stayed seated, my hands steady, my mind racing. Because in that moment, as I watched my daughter-in-law convulsing on the floor, I understood something terrifying. That coffee was never meant for her. It was meant for me. To understand why that morning mattered so much, you need to understand the life I had lived before it. 15 years earlier, my husband died suddenly from a heart attack. One moment I was a wife planning retirement trips. The next I was a widow standing in an office full of men who assumed the company would be sold within months. Whitlock Supply Group was small back then, modest contracts, tight margins, no room for mistakes. I stayed. I learned every department, every client, every weakness in the business. I worked nights, weekends, holidays. Not because I loved power, but because I believed responsibility did not disappear when life became inconvenient. Lucas was 23 when his father died. I tried to shield him from pressure, telling myself he would step up when he was ready. I wanted him to have time to grow. Instead, time hardened him. As the company grew, so did his impatience. He saw success as something owed to him, not earned. He spoke about leadership before he understood sacrifice. Through all of it, Patricia Acosta was there. She arrived in my life quietly, recommended by a friend, and never left. She cleaned. She cooked. She listened. She noticed things no one else did. When Lucas began staying late at the office, Patricia noticed. When Claire started arriving early on meeting days, Patricia noticed. When I began feeling dizzy some mornings, brushing it off as stress, Patricia noticed. I did not. I trusted my family. I trusted my son. I believed love meant safety. Looking back now, I see the warning signs clearly. The subtle shifts, the way conversations stopped when I entered a room, the way Claire watched me not with affection but with calculation. At the time, I told myself I was imagining things. That is what trust does. It makes you generous with doubt and blind to danger. By the time I sat in that chair on Tuesday morning, papers waiting for my signature, I believed I was preparing for retirement. In truth, I was preparing to disappear. And the only person in that house who understood what was coming was the woman who had nothing to gain by saving me. Patricia. Lucas Whitlock was not always the man he became. As a boy, he was quiet and observant. He followed me through warehouses and offices, asking questions about shipments and contracts. After his father died, he promised he would take care of me one day. I believed him. When Lucas joined the company full-time, I gave him space to learn. I protected him from decisions that could ruin him if he failed. I thought patience was love. But patience slowly turned into entitlement. Lucas began talking less about learning and more about control. He questioned my decisions in front of staff. He spoke about the company as if it already belonged to him, not in anger, in expectation. Claire encouraged it. She never raised her voice, never challenged me directly. She asked careful questions, framed suggestions as concern. She spoke often about efficiency and risk and my age. "You have done enough, Sandra. You deserve rest." What she meant was I was in the way. I noticed that Lucas no longer asked for advice. He waited, watched, measured how much longer he would need to endure my presence. When I refused to step aside, his tone changed. Meetings became colder, conversations shorter. Family dinners felt staged, like rehearsals for something I was not invited to understand. I blamed myself. I told myself this was the normal tension between generations, that every founder struggled to let go, that every child grew impatient. But something deeper was happening. Lucas was no longer waiting for me to retire. He was waiting for me to be gone. Patricia saw it before I did. She noticed the way Lucas avoided my eyes when money was mentioned, the way Claire asked questions about my will, the way documents appeared on my desk without discussion. One evening, Patricia asked me if I was feeling well. I told her I was just tired. She nodded but did not look convinced. Looking back, that was the moment she realized something I was not ready to face. That my son did not see me as his mother anymore. He saw me as a problem that had not solved itself fast enough. The meeting was scheduled for 10 that morning, but nothing about it felt ordinary. It was held in my living room, not at the office. Claire said it would feel more personal that way. Less pressure, more family. Patricia had already prepared my usual coffee earlier, the same way she had for years. I had not touched it. Instead, Claire arrived carrying coffee from outside. New place, new blend. She said it lightly, like a gift. Lucas laid the documents on the table before we even sat down. Thick folders, tabs already marked, everything prepared in advance. He spoke smoothly. About transition. About protecting the company. About how stressful leadership must be for someone my age. I listened without interrupting. The coffee sat warm in my hand. The smell was unfamiliar, slightly sharp, not what I was used to. Across the room, Patricia kept moving, straightening things that were already straight, wiping a table that was already clean. Her eyes never left the cup. When she stumbled and spilled the coffee, the room froze. Claire reacted first, sharp, irritated, complaining about the mess, the carpet, the distraction. Lucas followed, his voice tight with annoyance. Patricia apologized quickly, but her hands were shaking. As she knelt to clean the spill, she looked up at me and whispered the words that stopped my breath. "Do not drink it? Please trust me?" I felt the weight of the moment settle in my chest. I did not ask why. I did not demand an explanation. Years in business had taught me that warnings are not always loud. Sometimes they come quietly from the only person brave enough to speak. I nodded and switched cups when no one was looking. Lucas resumed talking as if nothing had happened. He pointed to signature lines, explained how simple it all was. Claire watched me closely, not my face, my hands. I lifted the cup and took a careful sip. It tasted bitter, wrong. I set it down and listened. Every instinct I had learned over decades told me something was deeply off. This was not a meeting to protect me. This was a meeting designed to remove me. And whatever was in that cup was meant to make sure I never walked away from the table. It happened faster than anyone expected. Claire stopped speaking in the middle of a sentence. Her hand tightened around the edge of the sofa, as if the room had suddenly tilted. She tried to stand. Her knees buckled. The sound of her body hitting the floor cut through the room, sharp and final. The folders slid off the table, papers scattered, coffee tipped and spilled. Lucas shouted her name and rushed to her side. Patricia froze near the doorway, her face drained of color, her eyes locked on Claire. I stayed seated. Claire's hands were shaking uncontrollably now. Her breathing came in short, uneven bursts. Her eyes rolled back as her body convulsed against the hardwood floor. Someone yelled for an ambulance. Lucas held her head, his voice loud, frantic, but something about it felt wrong to me. Too practiced, too controlled beneath the panic. I watched him closely. He never looked at the coffee. Not once. As the minutes stretched, my mind moved faster than my body ever could. The taste, the warning, the way Claire had insisted I finish my cup. And then the realization landed with terrifying clarity. That coffee was never meant for her. Claire was not the target. I was. The only reason I was still sitting upright, breathing steadily, was because Patricia had knocked the cup from my hands. The room filled with sirens soon after. Paramedics rushed in. Questions were asked. Answers were incomplete. As they lifted Claire onto the stretcher, her body finally went still, her face pale, her lips tinged an unnatural blue. Lucas looked up at me then. For a brief moment, our eyes met. There was no fear in his. There was calculation. In that instant, I understood that whatever had been planned that morning had gone wrong. And the person who was supposed to be lying on that floor was not his wife. It was me. The ambulance ride felt endless. I sat beside Lucas in the emergency room waiting area, watching doctors move quickly behind closed doors. Claire had been taken straight in, no questions, no delays. Lucas paced, he rubbed his hands together, he spoke to nurses, he made calls. He never once asked how I was feeling. After nearly an hour, a doctor came out. Her voice was calm, practiced, careful with every word. Claire had been poisoned. The substance had not been identified yet, but the symptoms were clear. This was not an allergy, not food poisoning, not stress. Poison. The word landed heavy in my chest. The doctor asked what Claire had eaten or drunk that morning. Lucas answered quickly. Coffee, brought from outside, we all had some. That was not true. I had barely taken a sip. I watched Lucas as he spoke. He did not hesitate, he did not stumble over his words. He told a story he had already prepared. When the doctor mentioned involving the police, Lucas nodded too quickly, agreed too easily. Of course, whatever is necessary. As soon as she walked away, Lucas turned to me. We should have the house cleaned, he said it casually, before investigators get there. It was a mess. That was the moment my suspicion turned into certainty. Innocent people protect lives. Guilty people protect scenes. I told him no. I said the house should be left exactly as it was. His jaw tightened for just a second before he masked it. Why would you say that? Because someone tried to kill your wife, I replied, and maybe they were not aiming at her. Lucas stared at me, searching my face, measuring how much I knew. That night, when I stepped outside the hospital for air, I made a call of my own. Patricia answered on the first ring. She did not ask how Claire was. She asked if I was safe. And that told me everything I needed to know. Patricia asked me to meet her away from the house. Not at work, not at the hospital, somewhere public, somewhere safe. When I saw her sitting alone at a small cafe, I barely recognized the woman who had worked quietly in my home for 18 years. Her hands were steady, but her eyes carried the weight of someone who had been holding a secret for too long. She did not waste time. She told me she had been watching Claire for months. At first it was small things, Claire arriving early on mornings when I had important meetings, insisting on preparing my coffee herself, sending Patricia out of the room with unnecessary errands. Then my health began to change. I complained of dizziness, fatigue, nausea. I blamed stress, age, long hours. Patricia did not. She began writing things down, dates, times, symptoms, patterns. One morning, she pretended to be cleaning the pantry while watching the kitchen through a reflection in the glass. That was when she saw it. Claire removed a small vial from her purse and tipped drops into my coffee. Patricia did not confront her. She did not tell anyone. She knew no one would believe a housekeeper accusing the company heir and his wife. Instead, she documented everything. She showed me photographs. Claire near my cup, Claire stirring slowly, Claire checking her watch afterward. She told me she had overheard conversations between Claire and Lucas, quiet ones, careful ones, conversations about my will, about insurance, about how long it would take before I stopped asking questions. Lucas knew. He was not being manipulated, he was participating. Money had already been moved from company accounts into private ones. Life insurance policies had been taken out in my name without my knowledge. They were not waiting for me to retire. They were waiting for me to die. That morning, Patricia saw Claire add more poison than usual, enough to finish it, enough to make my death look natural. She panicked. So she did the only thing she could think of. She spilled the coffee. She warned me. And when Claire drank from the wrong cup, the plan collapsed. Patricia looked at me then, tears finally breaking through her control. "I could not let them kill you," she said, "not after everything." In that moment I understood the full truth. The woman who owed me nothing had risked everything to save my life. And the son I trusted with everything had been ready to watch me die. Hearing the truth did not make me cry. It made me quiet. Patricia did not dramatize what she had seen. She did not exaggerate. She spoke the way someone does when they are finally allowed to tell the truth after months of fear. She told me about the recordings. She had started leaving her phone on the counter, in the hallway, near the study door. She captured fragments of conversations that were never meant for her to hear. Lucas talking about timing. Claire talking about dosage. Both of them talking about me as if I were already gone. They joked about how tired I looked, how easy it was to guide me towards certain decisions, how no one questions a woman in her 60s who starts feeling weak. One recording stayed with me more than the rest. Lucas said it would be easier once I stopped signing things. Claire answered that it would not take much longer. They were calm, casual, intimate. Like two people planning a vacation. Patricia watched me as I listened, ready to catch me if I broke. I did not. Something inside me hardened instead. This was no longer about betrayal. This was about survival. Lucas was not confused, he was not pressured, he was not a victim of manipulation. He had chosen money over conscience. He had chosen inheritance over his mother. That night, after Patricia left, I sat alone in my hotel room and replayed everything in my mind. The way Lucas avoided my eyes. The way he rushed answers at the hospital. The way he wanted the house cleaned before police arrived. Blood did not mean loyalty. It never had. It only meant access. By morning, the police had everything Patricia collected. Photos, notes, recordings, financial records. Lucas was arrested 2 days later. Claire was charged from her hospital bed. I did not attend the arrest. I did not need to see him in handcuffs to know who he was. The man I had raised was gone. In his place was someone who had looked at his mother and decided she was worth more dead than alive. And that truth changed everything I believed about family forever. The courtroom was quieter than I expected. No shouting, no drama, just facts laid out piece by piece until there was nowhere left to hide. The prosecution did not rush. They did not need to. Patricia's testimony alone was enough to make people sit straighter in their seats. 18 years of quiet observation. Months of careful documentation. They played the recordings. Luca's voice filled the room. Calm, detached, discussing timelines and money and what would happen after I was gone. Claire's voice followed. Precise. Confident. Explaining dosage and symptoms as if she were giving a presentation at work. No one in the courtroom looked at me when the recordings ended. They were all watching Lucas. He did not look back. Financial records came next, transfers from company accounts, insurance policies taken out in my name, documents Lucas claimed he knew nothing about. The jury did not need to be convinced. Lucas was not a son who made a mistake. He was a man who made a plan. The verdict came quickly. Guilty on all counts. Lucas Whitlock was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Claire received the same sentence. When the judge finished reading the decision, Lucas finally looked at me. There was no apology in his eyes, no regret. Only anger. I felt nothing. No relief, no satisfaction, just the quiet certainty that the truth had finally caught up with him. Patricia was cleared of all suspicion. The charges against her were dismissed. The judge thanked her for her courage. As we left the courtroom together, reporters called my name, asked how it felt to see my son sentenced. I did not stop walking. Justice is not a feeling, I said. It is a result. And the cost of greed is always higher than people expect. Survival did not look the way I imagined it would. There was no celebration when the trial ended, no sense of victory, only silence and the understanding that my life could not continue the way it had before. I sold the house. I could not live in a place where my own child had planned my death. Every room carried memories that no longer belonged to love or family. They belonged to calculation. I stepped away from the company for several months. Not because I was weak, but because I needed clarity. Leadership requires a clear mind, and mine had been shattered. During that time, Patricia stayed close. She did not hover. She did not offer advice unless I asked. She showed up every morning with coffee and quiet consistency, the same way she had for years. One afternoon, I asked her why she stayed. She said, because someone had to remind me that loyalty still exists. Those words changed the direction of my life. I returned to the company with boundaries I had never allowed myself before. Control was no longer something I shared out of obligation. It was something I protected. I created a foundation to support older men and women facing financial and emotional abuse from their own families. People like me. People who trusted too deeply. Patricia became my partner in that work. Not my employee. My equal. Survival was not about revenge. It was not about punishment. It was about choosing to live honestly after discovering the truth. I lost a son. But I found clarity. And I learned that the people who save your life are not always the ones you gave birth to. Sometimes they are the ones who simply refuse to stay silent. I am often asked how I live with what happened. The truth is, I do not live with it, I live beyond it. What Lucas and Claire did nearly ended my life, but it also stripped away every illusion I had been holding on to. About family, about loyalty, about what love really means. Blood did not protect me. Awareness did. Courage did. And the quiet integrity of a woman who had nothing to gain by saving me did. If there is one lesson my story leaves behind, it is this. Never ignore the small warnings, never dismiss the people who see what you are too close to notice, and never assume that kindness makes you weak. It makes you human. If you are watching this and something in your life feels off, trust that instinct. Ask questions. Protect yourself. You are not imagining things. End the video. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And comment below with the city you are watching from. I read every single one. Your story matters too.